This is our fourth and final video on the topic of market research. And by the end of this video, you should be able to explain how companies analyze and use marketing information. And we're going to have a look at some of the other issues that might affect market research. So let's start by looking at how businesses analyze and use that information. And key to this for many large businesses is what is known as customer relationship management, or CRM. Almost every big business nowadays will have a CRM system, and this system manages the whole range of information that a business keeps about individual customers. And it uses that to carefully manage what we call touch points. In other words, every time the organization contacts you, it will use some of that information either to address you or to talk to you about things that it knows that you're interested in, or to offer you perhaps offers on the kinds of products that you tend to buy. So it will bring all that information together to give you a very personalized interaction whenever you meet with that business, whether that's online or over email or in person. So typically a CRM system will consist of software and analysis tools that integrate all of that information, that do deep analysis of that information and apply the results to better help us when we interact with the business, and of course, to better help the business sell its products to us. Okay, some of this data that the businesses will hold is what we've called big data, and we've talked about this in previous videos, this idea of big data, huge databases of information that now exist about us and about consumers in general and about products. This goes hand in hand with marketing analytics, because data on its own is meaningless. We have to analyze that data in order to extract meaningful patterns in it, to extract meaning from it, because it's that meaning that will provide those customer insights that we talked about last week, the kind of insights that inform a business about attitudes, for example, towards its products, that enable businesses to take action. So businesses are trying to get from big collections of data to meaningful insights. And that's what this step in the process, the market research process, is all about, getting meaning. So you come into contact with this every day, for example, in your relationship with Sussex University. Perhaps when you're midway through your undergraduate course, the university will contact you to talk to you about master's courses that you might be interested in. The university will know what kinds of master's courses you'll be interested in. It might know what kind of things are more likely to make you respond to their communications. It will know a lot about you by then. And commercial organizations use this kind of approach as well. Take a big food producing company like Kraft. They collect numerous amounts of data from their consumer, and then they analyze it in a way that enables them to know what kind of people are most interested in a particular product, perhaps, where they're likely to buy that product, what kind of price point they want that product to be at, how often they're likely to buy that product, what other products they might be interested in at the same time. So it's this analysis that begins to make sense of all the data that's collected in the market research. But that data is only useful if we can distribute it throughout the organization, and if we can make it available to people within the organization in a way that makes sense to them. And this is where again, most big businesses will have a management information system, or an MIS. And it's the job of the MIS to make that information available across the organization in a way that's meaningful and understandable by marketers and other decision makers. So we've been through the whole marketing process, from deciding what the objectives are to planning the research, carrying out the research, and then analyzing the data in order to produce meaningful insights. But in addition to doing all of this, before we leave the topic of market research, it's important that we understand some of the other issues around market research, including things like the impact of public policy and ethics, but not limited to those things. So let's start by just remembering that market research is not just the domain of big business. We've spoken mainly about big business, but actually even the smallest of businesses will conduct market research. They will just do it on a smaller scale. And of course, it's not just for profit businesses that carry out market research. Non-profit organizations will also carry out a lot of market research to understand their donors, to understand what is likely to attract people to their cause. But whatever kind of business it is involved in market research, the principles remain the same. It's important to start with those research objectives. It's important to plan and choose the correct data collection tools, and it's important to analyze carefully. And then there's international marketing research. Increasingly, businesses are carrying out their market research internationally because an increasing number of businesses are global businesses. But international research brings with it its own problems. Businesses are going to be dealing with markets that are very diverse, very different from each other. Sometimes it can be difficult to find good secondary data in some foreign markets. In very developed countries like the UK and Europe, it's relatively easy. We can find Mintel reports about almost every market. If you try to do that in a developing nation, it can be more difficult. Developing good samples, in other words, choosing the right people to ask questions of in your research, can be difficult on the international stage because we naturally don't necessarily understand some of those international markets in the way that we might understand our own domestic market. And it can be difficult to reach respondents in some markets. For example, in some countries, internet coverage is not as good as it might be in others. In some countries, people live much more rurally than in others. It can be difficult to reach those people. And then handling those differences, not just in language, but also in culture and attitudes towards marketing research, can be difficult. The last thing any business wants to do is to offend or upset consumers at that early stage of market research. Market research is often the first stage in the selling process. So market research on an international scale is difficult and it can be very expensive. But what most companies understand is that the cost of not doing market research is often much higher because international markets are less familiar and therefore businesses need to know more about them. The final thing that I want to talk about in relation to market research is privacy. And increasingly, this is a really important topic for all of us. And market researchers have to take this issue very seriously now, because if they don't, we will become angry. We will become less cooperative. We will be less likely to become customers of an organization that does not respect our privacy. Very recently, WhatsApp revised its terms and conditions, and many consumers felt that those terms and conditions affected their privacy in a negative way. And there was a huge number of people who closed their WhatsApp accounts and moved away from that particular platform. So consumer privacy is vital. Businesses have to be seen to be respecting that. And if they don't, increasingly, governments will intervene and hold them to account. So the best practice really is for researchers is to always just keep to asking just for the information that's needed. It's never a good idea to go and ask everything and anything. Focus on what you're trying to achieve as a business and what information you need in order to achieve that. The second thing is to make sure that the information is always used responsibly. so that it's not used for other purposes. It's just used for the purpose for which it was collected, to provide that customer value. And look after it, keep it safe. Don't share it without the customer's permission. Those are 3 good principles that wherever you are in the world will help a company to protect its reputation. Okay, occasionally businesses have been known to misuse their research findings and to deliberately misrepresent the findings. I think one good example of this is when you see advertisements that say things like 8 out of 10 users thought this product was marvelous. Look very closely at the small print. How many users did they ask? I've seen global brands make these claims for 8 out of 10 users loving their product. And when you look at the small print, it turns out they've only asked 50 people. Well, for a global brand, that's a very small number. And it makes us suspicious. So again, reputable companies will make sure that they have a code of research ethics and standards that they adhere to. Reputable companies will accept responsibility to make sure they protect the best interests of both their consumers, because ultimately looking after your consumers' best interests also means that you're looking after your own best interests as a company. Okay, we're going to end there. There are a few questions for you to answer now.